Hey, real quick, we're going to be talking about some old NES Mega Man games, so there's going to be some flashing lights on screen. I don't know if that's like epilepsy tier flashing lights, but I'm not an expert, so I'm just going to put this here in case that scares you. Anyway. Do I need to introduce Mega Man? Oh. Maybe I do. Mega Man, Capcom's original mascot. At first, a little console title they produced while most of the company was busy pumping out arcade games, the Blue Bomber became an icon of 80s gaming. While it was never nearly as popular as Mario or Sonic, Mega Man had a solid anchor in the gaming consciousness due to the absolutely ludicrous number of entries in the series. How many Mega Mans do you think there are? 50? 70? Try over 130. Mega Man is a series about iteration. Each sub-series tries something new. Maybe it's successful out of the gate, maybe it takes a little work to polish, but once they find that formula, they refine and hammer it into shape. After a 2-year gap between the first and second outings, the Classic series, as it came to be known, became one of the first annual releases in gaming. If you weren't paying attention, it was easy for these things to blur together just a few entries in, cause, like I said, it was all about a formula. You get 8 bosses to challenge in any order, then you run, jump, slide, and shoot your way through their level. After beating the boss, you steal their weapon, and all the bosses are weak to another's weapon, so there's a rock, paper, scissors aspect to what order you take them down. By 1993, the franchise was getting a bit stale, so Capcom released Mega Man X, a sequel and the start of a new sub-series that completely reinvigorated the brand. X was faster, denser, and just dark enough to feel like a true graduation. Not to mention, it was made for the Super Nintendo, which was a big deal. We are inundated with homages to this 16-bit era, so I think the impact might be lost today, but I need you to understand how crazy this jump was. Your whole world was this. Then this comes out. This hasn't existed before as far as you're concerned. You're seeing this happen in real time. The cultural perception about where games were going affected the Mega Man series a lot. I think at the time most people assumed that X was just what the series was going to be now, so when Mega Man 7 came out 2 years later, it was a almost surefire disappointment. If you dig through old reviews, everyone's just comparing it to X. Now, in recent years, there's been a critical reevaluation of 7 and a lot more appreciation for it on its own merits, but there's another game I don't think has been given the same look back. Mega Man 6. 6 is an awkward and unfortunate game. It was released on the NES in 1993. That's right, not just 2 years after the Super NES came out, but the same year as the leap and bound that was X. The game was completely overshadowed by its context, and I call it unfortunate because I think 6 is the best entry on the NES. Yeah, out of all these games, I'd rank it number 1. The game opens with a cinematic in line with the intros they'd started doing around 4. It's very brief and doesn't make as much effort to set the mood as that one, but I do really like the premise. It centers on the World Robot Tournament, in which robot masters representing their home countries compete in combat, I assume. As tends to happen with these things, the organizer of the event, Mr. X, is evil and reprograms the entrants to achieve world domination. Mr. X is a brand new character, and I appreciate that they gave him a completely different vibe from series baddie Dr. Wily. I mean, for one, he's Hindu. The title screen here is a simple globe. It reminds me a lot of this classic cover to the Mega Man Gigamix manga by Hitoshi Ariga. I like it, representing the world cultures theme. It has that Mega Man blue. Speaking of world cultures, here are our 8 bosses. There's typically 2 optimal stages to do first. I start with Flame Man. I really like these stats that pop up for the character's introduction. This is the only game that does it. They don't really make much sense. He's got 88 mobile and 93 defense. Duh, that's not how you spell it. The little details about their power source, title, and the name of their stage are neat. This is the oil field, and that, combined with his turban, suggests Flame Man is probably from Saudi Arabia. First off, wow! Look at these colors. This game has some great palettes in its stages, and I love the contrasting shades of orange and purple here, offset by a neutral industrial gray to sell this being an oil field. The purple paints in the sand dunes in the background, the bricks, and the oil, which serves as the stage's main gimmick. It's a harmless liquid at first, but a few enemies can spit flaming projectiles that set it ablaze, turning it into a hazard. This stage is also a great bite-sized example of the series' level design. Mega Man abides by a traditional Japanese style of storytelling called Kisho Tenketsu. This is a formula where an element is introduced, developed, twisted, and then resolved. As mechanics shape the way we respond to games, and emotions are the point of stories, Kisho Tenketsu manifests here thusly. Introduce a new idea in a safe environment where it won't give the player too much trouble. Iterate on the idea by putting it in new situations. Put a twist on it by changing up some aspect or combining it with something else. Then finish easy with a challenge about as hard as the introduction. This creates a natural arc of rising tension and intrigue, a dramatic climax, and a satisfying wrap-up. It's all over the game, and Flame Man's stage does this over and over again, keeping the oil pools as a consistent theme and introducing ideas around it. I especially like this moment. Right around the fourth time you see these flame-tossing guys, aka what feels like the resolution, there's an E-tank to reward you for getting halfway through the stage. E-tanks refill all your health on demand, so they're pretty valuable, and this one's just out in the open next to a Gabual, these little Roombas who speed up when they see you. The area to the right looks a little dicey, so you'll need to double back to proceed as normal. All you have to do is grab the E-tank and head back to the left. Oh! Whew! That was close. By simply coming at it from a different direction, this easy as pie enemy placement becomes 5 times as dangerous due to the way the game respawns them. It's really neat and surprising. A short trek to the boss room later, and I like Flame Man's fight a lot. Like most classic series bosses, he's got a small move list, but it keeps you active, jumping around to avoid his pillars. For beating him, we get the Flame Blast and Rush Power Adapter. Yeah, when I said this series was about iteration, that doesn't mean they didn't get gimmicky with it. Mega Man 3 introduced Rush, Mega Man's robot dog companion who could transform into different power-ups to help you get around. By 6, they were like, what if Rush was, like a suit? A power armor thing? You wore? This comes in the form of the power and jet adapters, and I'm gonna be honest, I like how they're integrated. The power suit takes away your ability to slide, but lets you charge up a high-powered punch that can knock enemies away and destroy certain blocks. The jet suit can't charge its shots or slide, but lets you fly. There's some interviews with the artists where they're like, how is this supposed to work? What am I supposed to draw? Also, speaking of the devs, friend of the show, John Shapaniuk, interviewed Keiji Inafune a few years ago for his book, The Untold History of Japanese Game Developers, and he paid way too much money to commission and purchase the rights to these photos of him. He's given me a non-exclusive, indefinite license in writing to use them, and I don't know when the next opportunity is going to come up, so let's look at them and listen to all the money he burned. Yeah, there he is. Oh, the head turn. Yeah, put it in reverse, KG. He could have spent this on food. My biggest issue with the adapters is that there's too much menuing involved in swapping to them. You can skip most of the animation, but it's still a bit cumbersome to have to do every time, especially given how often you'll be using them. 7 made a good decision by combining them into a single suit. They'll become more important later, but for now, onto Blizzard Man. Most likely representing Canada, Blizzard Man is our resident ice stage. Again, I really dig the colors of these stages. The various shades of blue with this emerald green is so eye-catching. Ice stages get a bad rap, and deservedly so, but outside of a few instances, they aren't too much of a bother here. Actually, one of the main mechanics of this level are these time bombs that detonate after pressing their switches. I'm a big fan of the Flame Blast. It's an arcing weapon that deals a lot of damage and spawns a pillar of fire where it lands. This not only lets you use it preemptively as an enemy approaches, but also to snipe them when they're below you. In addition, this is one of the few stages where you get to use it to melt ice walls for bonus goodies, which is always fun. Blizzard Man has one of my favorite set pieces in the game, this hot pink submarine that bobs up and down below a spiked ceiling. You have to pay close attention to the height of various platforms. There's this exciting side path you can take where you need to rapid fire slide to get an E-tank, and it's all capped off with a culmination of the time bombs from earlier in the level. And guess what's right after? A relatively easy encounter with the same bombs to ease you back down. Just a really memorable sequence. Blizzard Man is an easy enough fight, especially with his weakness, but I like his rolling attack. It's neat. Next is probably my least favorite stage, Plant Man. I am not a fan of several moments here, like this one right at the start. I killed it, but I swear everyone gets hit by this grasshopper the first time. There's also this big stompy guy who's kind of unintuitive to fight because of how you enter the screen from below. This gorilla mini-boss always hits me a few times. You're supposed to shoot him to send him back, but it's tricky to time all your shots properly to do so and still deal damage. Maybe I'm just a baby. Then there's the springs!
Cool.
Oh goody, let's do platforming with them over death pits. These fish are a very common type of enemy in Mega Man, and they will punish you for a lack of patience. For as annoying as I find a lot of this stage, using the small health pickups as fruit is a cute touch. Come on. Come on. Come on, there we go. Let me get the big health. Let me get... You fish! I wasn't good at Plant Man's pattern, so he killed me after I already wasted half of my weapon energy. I had to finish the fight Buster only, which was pretty easy. Jump his projectile, shoot. This earns us Plant Barrier, a totally standard shield weapon for the series, and the Jet Adapter. On to one of my favorite stages, Tomahawk Man, from the US, as you might have guessed. I always thought it was cool that we were represented by a Native American character on a stage that looks like the Southwest, filled with gunslinger robots. This is one of a few stages that actually tells a story, although it's in the background. Literally. You start at midday with a clear blue sky. After the first screen, Mega Man descends into an underground mine shaft with a Met Dispenser mini-boss and some admittedly filler enemies. After battling your way through the caves, you climb back to the surface, where noon has turned to... Ooh. This sunset is beautiful. Mega Man 6 is hands down one of the best looking games on the NES. And guess what I only discovered replaying this game for this video? If you come back here after defeating the boss, the stage starts at night, and you emerge from the mine to a gorgeous golden sunrise. This game is so great. Equipping the jets gives you access to a whole other alternate route, doing some precarious platforming over spikes. I like the way the flight feels. It's kind of heavy. It has the same sort of weight that Mega Man does, and you have to use it early in a lot of cases to account for the physics. There's even more splits in the level, only accessible with the adapters. One path leads to this cracked block that's just barely out of reach unless you get to the absolute pixel edge of the opposite ledge. inside. A cool cameo by Proto Man, who gives you the Energy Balancer, which will refill your lowest weapon when you pick up energy while the Buster is equipped. A very handy power-up for when things get hectic and you don't have time to switch around to refill the one you want. The other path leads to an alternate boss fight with Tomahawk Man. There are 4 of these alternate encounters in the game, and each one plays out the same as the regular boss, but beating it will also earn you a beat part. Once you collect all 4 letters, you unlock Mega Man's trusty bird, Beat, who flies around and pecks enemies for you. Tomahawk Man is decently tough. A lot of bosses will jump over you, giving you a chance to reposition, but he'll often stay stationary and just hammer you with attacks. Getting cornered is real bad, but if you figure out where to stand and when to slide under his moves, it's a pretty satisfying fight. Enter Yamato Man. Gee, I wonder where he's supposed to be from. This stage, as with many of my favorites, really leans into the branching paths via the adapters. On the first screen, you can take a completely different route through his castle. I like these spear guys. They're invulnerable while they're spinning, and they're often placed above or below you. Silver Tomahawk, our new weapon, is perfect for dealing with the former. This game in general has a great selection of weapons. One of the most important aspects of a Mega Man game in my eyes is the variety and balance of the arsenal. Mega Man's default means of attack is just shooting horizontally, and starting with 4 he could charge his shot to do more damage. Every special weapon is competing with the Mega Buster, because it's free and almost always gets the job done. Therefore, they should fill some unique niche in your toolkit and be reasonably impactful. Unfortunately, I think the 2 previous games had rather weak offerings on this front. 4's weapons are all pretty viable, but they're also samey. Half of them are variations on shoot something horizontally with a twist. It's a small blemish on an otherwise really solid entry. 5 has easily the worst in the series, bar none. There's a couple useful ones, but many are awkward, don't do much, overlap with each other, or are 2 of the most abysmal weapons in the franchise. Impressive. This is on top of the regular charge shot being way too strong here. There's just not much reason to experiment. 6's roster feels almost perfectly balanced. Each one fills a different hole in your game plan. Shoot up, shoot down, along the floor, the whole screen, at extreme angles. Plant barrier is probably the worst, but shield weapons are rarely that spectacular. Yamato Man's weapon, the Yamato Spear, is a rapid-fire beast that does a lot of damage fast and has the unique property of dealing damage to enemies through shields. The fight itself is straightforward. He takes a lot of damage from Tomahawk, and you can just brute force it. I do find it funny that he tosses his spear point at you and then goes, "Oh wait, let me pick it up. Oh shoot." Before I talk about the pain points of Nightman's stage, hot damn do I love this first screen. Such interesting color choice. I adore these pitch black pixel trees against the cloudy sunset. So atmospheric and contrasty with the cool greens and purples of the castle itself. Remember how the submarine is one of the best set pieces in the game? Well, meet the worst. The descending chandelier of death. It's funny because both involve avoiding the ceiling, but the timing on this one is so much stricter, and you've got a platform over spikes too. Then you've got to fight enemies barreling towards you with no warning. It's just too much, and the controls are too sensitive all at once. We haven't even gotten to the gimmicks. First, there's these rotating platforms that push you in a given direction. They're pretty harmless. They appear in Yamato Man Stage 2, and I don't mind them there. I'll admit that there's another really neat moment, just like in Tomahawk Man Stage. You come up to the roof, and the time has turned to night. It's not as stunning as there, but Nightman is most likely from England or Germany, and if it's the former, I don't expect much from the weather. After you beat it, the whole palette changes, and the stage starts on a gloomy, overcast day before turning to a foreboding purple. Cool. This place is supposed to be the capital of science, so I guess the designers were like, yeah, put some heads with feet wearing graduation mortars. I suppose they study here, and you've just royally pissed them off. It's a brief reprieve before the other gimmick, bouncing. Oh, you thought Plant Man stage was bad. Oh my god, too much bounce. It's too much. For some reason, these things only appear once. The area isn't even that dangerous, and then onto the boss room. Just a really strange, underdeveloped mechanic. Yeah, as much as I like the aesthetics of this stage, and Nightman himself, it feels a bit random with some bad moments sprinkled in there. This is another alternate boss room accessible with the power adapter, and oh, he's dead. Yeah, these spears are armor-piercing, alright. Centaur Man, who's almost certainly from Greece, is a bit of a mixed bag, but I like his stage a lot overall. The opening is this very well-scripted, hectic scene of danger falling from the sky. If you pace yourself a little bit, it's not hard to deal with, but it feels really cool to be dodging and weaving through the chaos. This is a perfect spot for Flame Man's weapon, which somehow works underwater. Oh yeah, water. When I said mixed bag, I meant this screen! This screen right here sucks! Alright, a couple things. Mega Man games have always had unique water levels. As opposed to swimming or slow movement, it's more like moon physics. I actually prefer that. I think it's fun to leap around. To justify it, however, they often put spikes or some other hazard on the ceiling. Centaur Man is no different, but this is the only underwater segment in the game until the fortress levels. I've just gotten my feet wet, literally, and you're making me thread the needle or risk certain death? You start dropping the moment you let go of jump. Once you understand that and get a feel for it, it's not so hard, but wrapping your head around it takes a while, and even once I clear that, I still have a ton of trouble over or undershooting jumps right afterwards. I think there should have been a slightly longer segment underwater leading up to this, just to get comfortable with the physics. I'm willing to forgive this level only because the following segment is awesome. Suddenly, the water is upside down, rising and lowering, and you have to make otherwise impossible jumps by leaping up into it and using the funky physics to your advantage. There's even some hopping enemies who demonstrate it for you. It's great. Easily the coolest water level gimmick in the series, and I only wish it was longer. A few more screens and you're at Centaur Man. He gets absolutely melted by the Night Crusher. It's not even a contest. Anyway, let's cap things off with Wind Man. Can you guess where he's supposed to be from? This level's gimmick is another physics funny, these fans that blow you up or down. I like it a lot. The enemy placement never feels too overbearing for the fact that you can't stop floating around, and there's some real vertigo-inducing moments platforming over the open air. Night Crusher comes in handy now that I'm not saving it for a boss fight. It's a bit similar to Silver Tomahawk, but it can be aimed and boomerangs back around at the cost of a little range. Very fun weapon. Windman has the unfortunate fate of being weak to a screen-clearing weapon. Sorry, bud. I'm sure you had some very cool moves to show me. With that, we earn Windstorm, a projectile that travels across the ground and does decent damage to most enemies. It's not terribly unique aside from the woo onwards and upwards to Mr. X's fortress. Oh, I love this stage. Some personal history. This was one of the first Mega Man games I ever played using an emulator on a cheap laptop I got for Christmas in the 7th grade. There's something really magical about this level. The music, composed by Yuko Takehara, is so sweet and nostalgic. The cityscape in the background is just entrancing. It's so perfectly detailed, but still cloaked in mysterious dark hues, the moon looming over them. I see the little lights in the windows and can just imagine the people going about their lives while Mega Man fights for them in the distance. As you ascend the tower, you get a full view of the night sky, featuring some of the best star tiles on the NES. The whole thing fills me with wonder. Mega Man's world feels so realized. I love it. Even this annoying alternate pathway. Yeah, this is one part I save stated on. I'm not gonna do this legit. Following this route leads to 4 extra lives and the stage boss. These things are weird, and I had to try this fight a few times. Turns out you can just hang out on the side and blast them with the power punch. It completely knocks them into the other direction. Kinda neat, if a bit annoying by any other strategy. Now deep into Mr. X Tower, you fight through a pretty standard level. The one tricky part is these semi-hidden drops in the floor, but they're telegraphed early. Oh gee, I wonder what weapon I should use here. Oh, isn't it convenient that this boss happens to be weak to tomahawks? The next stage has some neat platforming on these pendulums. It's pretty easy with the jet adapter. The second halves of Mega Man games can often be the most fun, now that you have every tool in your arsenal available. The Robot Master stages get progressively more fun as you go, because you have increasingly more to work with. Each of them should be beatable with just the Mega Buster, so when you've got more than that, it gets easier and easier to break the game. That's not a downside. I think it's part of the series' identity. You have to earn that power. The Fortress levels, by contrast, are designed with everything in mind. So instead, they're more about thinking on your feet about what the best weapon for each situation is. Many situations have a couple ways to approach them, and figuring out your own path is really satisfying and clever. This Mazinger Z reference with a Met inside is pretty cute, but it's a cinch with Blizzard Attack. The last Mr. X level has some stressful platforming over a massive pit, but it's chill until the final boss. Mr. X goes down like a chump to Flame Man's weapon, probably the easiest final boss in series history. Alright, what's he got to say? My scheme for world domination has failed, D. But I still have enough power to stop you. Mr. X was Wily? Dude! I did not know that. On to the second fortress, a staple of the classic series at this point. This time he's holed up in a skull pagoda thing. The first level brings back the fans from Windman's stage and a time-honored Mega Man tradition, dropping blindly down a spike shaft. The boss is this mechanical dinosaur that ejects floating platforms you ride on to target its eyes? Why are you doing that? You'd be invulnerable if you just didn't do that. The hitbox on the eyes is a little narrow, but it's not bad. The next stage revisits the ice physics from Blizzard Man, and we get another classic staple, block puzzles. Or you can melt the ice wall and completely avoid them. The rest of the stage is pretty simple pacing stuff leading up to another pushover boss. Alright, penultimate stage, this time incorporating the water from Centaur Man. See, I would have liked this more in that level, actually starting you out interacting with the water before you have to do anything precarious. The rest of it is a boss rush, a time-honored tradition that is, as usual, very easy with all the weakness weapons. Wily's final level has this really nice-looking cyan color. It mixes with warmer tones like this reddish purple and magenta. Huh. Wonder why I like this palette so much. I joked earlier about Mr. X being easy, but this might actually be one of the easiest final bosses in the series, as long as you have tomahawks fully charged. He leaps back and forth, you slide under, shoot him, repeat. Do that for 2 phases, then for the third, just be patient as he teleports around the room. I was maxed out on E-tanks to this point, so it was never a sweat, and you've got more than enough weapon energy to take him down. Wily does his little Wayne's World. Mega Man gets a little kinky, and he's locked up at Oh! Jesus! Oh, that noise! Oh, it's awful! This ending leads right into Mega Man 7, if you're curious. And that's Mega Man 6. The credits roll, showcasing every Robot Master along with their creator. If you didn't know, after the first game, each Robot Master in the series was designed by fan letters. The concept of these highly themed characters with a consistent art style just set kids' minds on fire, and they would flood the Capcom offices with fan mail containing their drawings. The developers would sort through these submissions, select 8, and brush them up into their final looks. When the team saw Skullman's submission while working on 4, they thought it was so cool that they threw out an entire stage they'd already designed and remade it to match his aesthetic. Nightman and Windman share the honor of being the only bosses not submitted by Japanese fans, being from North Americans. Plant Man is notable for being the first 7-color sprite on the NES. That's more impressive when you know that the NES could only manage 4 colors per sprite. Well, it's not technically a single 7-color sprite, but a head and body locked to each other which move together. Mega Man himself uses a similar trick. That's how his eyes can blink. And honestly, stuff like that is what makes this series so special to me. On the surface, you might imagine Mega Man games to be churned out cash grabs meant to keep units on shelves, and while they usually sold okay, they weren't really the big money makers. No, for how many of these games there are, what really stands out to me is the care and attention put into them. Care and attention that might only have been possible at that pace because of how formulaic they are. It's a series about rock-solid fundamentals, constantly sharpening and making small innovations to see what sticks and what doesn't. It's a world where every killer robot has funny googly eyes. It's a story about a pacifist who fights because he loves peace. It's games where the simplest action is the coolest thing ever. It's Mega Man. To me, 6 is the purest embodiment of all that. From its silly plot to the mostly great stage design, the perfect roster of weapons, charming theme and characters, wonderful music, and the absolutely stunning level of polish everywhere, it's one of the most overlooked entries in the series. And if you like anything that Mega Man is about, I can't recommend it more highly. In fact, you should check out the series in general. I love Mega Man. I'm never going to stop shilling Mega Man, and I think that with Capcom's huge spurt of collections from the last couple years that some of the more forgotten titles will get their due. Writing about this game has filled my heart with a lot of warmth and love. I know this video will probably come out around Christmas or New Year's, and I hope that everyone has managed to kindle a little in themselves too. Thank you to my patrons who keep this channel free. $5 and up patrons get access to the scripts and notes, and $10 gets exclusive commentary tracks for these videos. Bye.
Here comes a daredevil!